After the 1989 earthquake, where the Workers Club in town was basically destroyed, I was part of a 3-artist team that was commissioned to design and produce works that were to be included in the new building. The team was put together by Birgitta Hansen. She was one of the artists, and it consisted of Birgitta, Kath Grushka and myself. We were chosen on our strengths of materials that we used, mediums that we used, the sorts of works that we could produce. Birgitta chose me for my ceramic background. She was thinking of collaborating on doing a tile mural, and also for me to do some large ceramic planters. Kath Grushka was there for her fibre works, and Gitta, of course, for her painting. The commission was broken down into a couple of stages. The first stage saw us working with the interior designer, who was from Sydney, and she came up and we had meetings where we went through and identified sites around the building, just off the plans. The building wasn't there. This was way before the building was even started. We did that, and we also worked with the interior designer on colours that she had chosen to be throughout the club. We were constrained to working within those colours. We also looked at motifs and designs that could be repeated throughout the club, and we tried to identify themes that we thought aligned with the club and its role within the community. The design process took nearly a year, maybe even more. I can't remember now exact times. And meanwhile the club was started and being built, and we eventually got to walk on site and have a look and see if the sites that we'd identified as being suitable would be still suitable, given seeing it in the 3D, in the flesh, so to speak. And it was always interesting because you'd get little changes from the architect. For example, one of them was the site that Kath had identified as being suitable for one of her large fibre works. At first it was going to go the complete height of the stairwell, and then we found out that there was going to be louvers put in because the air conditioning wasn't going to be able to cope, so they needed to have louvers for fresh air coming in. Those sort of things happen in these sort of processes, and you learn to bounce with them and come up with new designs or changes to your original design. At the end of that process, we had a number of proposals to put to the board, because all this had to go before the board and be approved. We'll put the designs together, we'll fully cost them, do everything, and we'll make a presentation to the board, and the board will choose which of those that they approve. I think in the end we had Kath's major fibre work. I can't remember now whether it was 1 or 2 murals by Birgitta. There was a feature wall that we were thinking of painting, and then there was the tile mural that Birgitta and I would be collaborating on, and then a set of 12 planters. We put together quite a lot of materials to take to this board meeting. I think we ended up somewhere between 15 minutes and half an hour we had to sell all these proposals. I mean, it was quite a substantial financial commitment that the board were going to be making, so we felt that we really had to put together a good proposal if we wanted to have these artworks get up. We did our presentation to the board. They asked some questions. We had documents to hand to them for them to peruse and to have a look at, to make their decision. And they were to get back to us within, I think, a week or something like that. When they did get back to us, they accepted, again, I can't remember whether it was 1 or 2 murals by Birgitta. They accepted Kath's fibre work. They accepted the planters. They didn't want the wall, the feature wall, and they didn't accept the tile mural. Birgitta asked for some clarification as to why they didn't want the tile mural. They gave us some feedback and said that it really didn't align with the club's policies or the club's image that they wanted to project. Because the tile mural was going into what was being called the gaming room, it was going to have pokies, etc. there. The original design, which was arrived at in consultation with the interior designer, we based it on gambling basically. So there was horse racing and other things in the original design. The club said they didn't want to promote that. They didn't want to be seen as a gambling house, that they had never had any association with horse racing. The horses were quite a large part of the original design. So we were a little bit put out because the whole imagery of that had really been developed in consultation with this interior designer, and we asked could we lodge a protest based on the fact that we had been given the wrong brief, that we were misled in terms of what we used as motifs and design. The club accepted that and said, okay, yes, and they actually agreed to pay us to develop another design because they were quite interested in having a tile mural. Well, the club did give us some clarification. They said, look, the things that we're interested in is family things. We've got the card club, we've got the fishing club, the tennis club. So it was looking at family-oriented activities that the club was involved with. Did another mock-up of a tile design that included those sorts of things rather than the gambling. And eventually that was accepted and we went ahead and did it. The tilers were a bit scared at first of handling all the handmade tiles and asked us to hand them up to them. After a little while they got used to it though. The process of the making was quite interesting. For my part, with the ceramics, the large planters, I knew that I couldn't throw or fire planters of the size that they wanted. So I looked around and I found a fellow who specialised in throwing large ceramic pieces, Cameron Williams. At the time, he had his studio at Helensburgh, just south of Sydney. So I went down and that's where the pieces were actually made, and they were transported up by semi-trailer. They were big and very heavy. There was over 100 kilos of clay in each of the planters. They needed to be rock solid and stable. That was part of the brief, was that they not be able to be knocked over. So the planters were probably about half filled with concrete, so they weighed a hell of a lot. They were not to have plants planted directly into them. There was going to be an indoor plant firm that would supply plants and swap them out as needed, etc. So they actually needed to be watertight too. And they were terracotta, so that was another challenge. We got the pots up. During the making, the first trial ones that Cameron made, he throws on 2 wheels. He had 2 of them going, and these pots was there, and we were having a lunch break, and we heard this funny sound. We looked around and both had collapsed. He was throwing them upright and they had collapsed because of the shape. So we went to have another look at it and decided that they would be best thrown upside down. So they would be thrown on their lip. Cameron was doing the throwing and the firing, and I was down there to oversee the shape and whatnot, but also to do the decorating with slips. And I had to do that while they were upside down. So there was a lot of this, turning heads to try and see if the design was working. We made extras just in case, of both for firing and for transport and everything. And one did break in the transport. They were on pallets upside down, strapped down, but one moved and allowed it to crack. Gitta did her murals. She did big mock-ups of them. She uses a projector on the wall to sort of map it out, so she got all that sorted and got it ready. Kath did lots and lots of research, and again, when you do a commission in public spaces, it's quite different to doing one for a private commission. In the public spaces, they always have liability in mind, so nothing can be in any way dangerous to the public. For Kath's work, she was working on canvas, folded and painted canvas, and it wasn't until she'd almost started when she got communique through saying she must work in fireproof canvas. That added quite a lot of expense, quite a lot of weight, and she needed to work out how she was going to use the surface because it was no longer as porous as the other canvas had been for her to paint on. So that was a bit of a curveball for Kath. As far as the tiles went, we were very lucky. We were able to gain sponsorship from Earp Brothers to get a whole lot of bisque blank tiles, and the university allowed us to fire the tiles in their kilns. It was still a major process because it was huge, so huge. We didn't have anywhere we could lay the tiles out and paint them as one, so it was done in sections. Gitta had done a very good sectional by section drawing, so I was mixing colours, I was doing some of the painting backgrounds and things like that. She did all the fine work. We did it section by section. It wasn't until we had the whole thing done that we found a space where we could lay it all out and have a look at it and see if it was actually going together, that we'd got the colours right each time and that things were going to join up. So it was fairly stressful, and I can remember there was actually a little clip on the news. The news team arrived literally about 10-15 minutes after we had got the whole lot of the tiles in one place and were laying them out. I don't even think we had them all laid out when they arrived. And they were talking to me, and I must have sounded a little bit negative about it in some ways. It takes a little while to get used to the colours. They're a little bit different to what I thought they were going to be, and they were still good, and it all worked, and it looked terrific when it was all done. But you have those first reservations.
I think the thing with any artist, when you first get work up, it's a bit of disappointment because it's not as good as you wanted it to be straight away, but then on reflection we'll be happy with it, I think, overall.
Yeah, when you paint it, it looks very pastely, and when it comes through fully glazed like that, it's so rich, and your eyes just have to get used to it. It's new.
The Australia Council threw in $12,000 under its Art in Public Places program. Money sunk into a swimming sequence, a selection of metre-high ceramic pots, and what they call a fabric installation. The artists hope the works will become tourist attractions in their own right.
For Kath, she made all the pieces. She had to source stainless steel piping. These things were to be lashed into a stainless steel frame. Once the frame was on the wall, we had scaffolding up, and these canvas folded sections were all lashed in. The lashing just took forever, and poor old Kath, she was getting very worried, very stressed as the deadline approached. And in the end, I can remember there was all of us up on the scaffolding, all wearing gloves, but all having bleeding hands from pulling these ropes really tight to lash these. They had to be tensioned and really tight so that the piece would stay. We worked till late at night under lights. We started early in the morning, and we were all totally exhausted by the end of when that was done. And it was terrific to see the scaffolding come down and see the work, because that's the other thing. Kath would get down off the scaffolding every now and again, but she couldn't see the whole work because there was all this tiers of scaffolding going up. So you could only really see bits of it. And again, it was a reveal when the whole of it was cleared of scaffolding. Now, the sting in the tail of the tile mural was that after about, I don't know, a year or two, it was covered up. It was covered up with a wall which then held multiple TV screens of racing, which is the very thing our original concept for the tile mural had been based on. They had now got into big time with racing. They had a TAB in there, and the whole wall was just covered with screens of horse races. So I find that quite ironic. The tile mural's still in there under a wall, but it didn't get seen for very long, which is a real shame. I'd love to see that wall come off and love to see the tile mural again. With a lot of commissions like this, You do have a clause in your contract that states that the premises, the commissioners, reserve the right to cover up, pull down, throw out your work within a period of time. The club had told us that they would probably be looking at redoing the interior every 5 years, and that some or all of the works may get jettisoned at that time. The tile mural got covered up. I'm pretty sure the paintings are still there. I haven't been in the club for years. Last time I saw my planters, they had been painted with house paint over the whole surface of them, so none of the artwork that I did on them was visible anymore, only that it was incised patterns, so there's a bit of texture there, but that's it. So that's what happens, but that's part of the deal. You know, you've signed off on a contract that says that you allow the club to do that, and that's just part of what you've got to be able to accept, that your artwork may end up on the rubbish tip. I'd say the project was a big success. The three of us, it was terribly, terribly exhausting, and there was conflict along the way. I often found myself being the peacemaker between Kath and Gitta. They're both very strong-minded women. I had conflicts with Gitta along the way, but those are the sort of things that you've got to resolve. We were working as a team, and we couldn't just walk away from it, or we couldn't just let it blow up to become something that was going to bring any one of us down too much. We got invitations to the opening. We went along and I met Paul Keating, he was the person that was opening it, and Peter Garrett from Midnight Oil. Somewhere I have their autographs on the invitation to the opening night. But it was good fun to be part of that and be acknowledged in the opening ceremony that we had contributed to this building, this new building. So overall, it was a good thing. Long and exhausting, but a good thing.